Welcome back to the Medcurity podcast, where we talk about HIPAA, security, and healthcare operations in a way that is practical and actually useful. Today, we are going to look at an important update that is coming to MIPS, specifically around the security risk analysis requirement in the Promoting Interoperability category. Now, this is one of those changes that may not sound too dramatic at first, but this has some real implications for how organizations approach their SRAs and how confident they can feel when they attest to that. So let's walk through what's changing, why it matters, and how to approach it without any stress or last-minute scrambling. Up until now, the MIPS security risk analysis requirement was fairly straightforward. Organizations attest that they conducted or reviewed an SRA during the performance year and that they addressed security updates as needed. In practice, that has often turned into a simple yes or no moment during reporting season, and over time, we've seen how that can play out. Some SRAs are done late in the year, some get reused from prior years with very minimal updates, some technically exist, but they don't always reflect how the organization is actually operating day to day. Now, CMS has been seeing this too, and they're responding to that. So, starting with the 2026 MIPS performance year, CMS is making a subtle but meaningful adjustment to that SRA attestation. Going forward, clinicians will be attesting not only that they completed a security risk analysis, but also that they took steps to implement security measures based on what that analysis uncovered. Now, that second part is the shift. CMS is making it clear that completing an SRA on paper isn't enough. They want to see that organizations are actually engaging with their results, identifying real risks, and doing something about them. Now, this isn't a new concept under HIPAA. The security rule has always paired risk analysis with risk management. What's changing is now MIPS is more explicitly reflecting that expectation. This update didn't come out of nowhere. Healthcare cybersecurity threats continue to increase, and CMS is paying close attention to how security gaps translate into patient safety issues, operational disruptions, and costly incidents. What they're really trying to do is close that gap between documentation and reality, between having an SRA on file and actively reducing your risk over time. Now, this change is about accountability, but it's also about realism. CMS isn't asking for perfection, they're asking for evidence of your follow-through. Now, this is where we'd want to pause because this might sound intimidating, but this does not mean that every single one of your risks needs to be resolved within the year, and it doesn't mean that a small practice suddenly needs an enterprise-level security program. CMS has clarified that beginning implementation counts. That might look like documenting a risk management plan, prioritizing vulnerabilities, assigning responsibility, or starting your mitigation efforts. The key is being able to show that the SRA led to action and not that everything is already perfect. For organizations, this update is really an invitation to rethink how their SRAs are used. Instead of treating your security risk analysis as that just once a year task, it needs to reflect what's actually happening in your environment, your systems, your vendors, your workflows, and your risks. It also means being more intentional about that documenting process. If you're making improvements, then those steps should be visible. If you've identified risks and created a plan, then that plan should be written down. If work is underway, then you should have some record of it. None of this has to be complicated, but it does need to be intentional. At Medcurity, this update really just reinforces the way that we have always approached security risk analyses. We don't see them as static reports or compliance paperwork. We see them as living assessments that should make security clearer and not more overwhelming. Our goal is to help organizations understand the risk in plain language, prioritize what matters most, and then take reasonable steps forward, not to hand them a report and then walk away, right? This MIPS update validates that approach. If there's one takeaway from today's episode, then it is this: the SRA is no longer just about checking a box, it's about demonstrating your progress. CMS is not asking for perfection, they're asking for evidence that security is being taken seriously and acted on. And when organizations approach the SRAs in this way, they tend to feel more confident, not just during their MIPS reporting, but during audits, incidents, and everyday operations. So if you have questions about how this change might might apply to your organization, or if you want support making sure that your SRA truly supports your MIPS attestation, that is exactly what we're here for. So thanks again for listening to the Medcurity podcast. If this episode was helpful, please share it with a colleague, and we will see you next time.